John, you and I are old enough to remember covering Dwight Gooden when he was both a phenom and then with the Yankees, and he's joining us this week on the show.
Absolutely. Should be a great guest and terrific guy, and certainly had a very interesting career. Looked like he was on his way to the Hall of Fame, so we'll have a chance to ask him all about that. And I give the Mets credit because they're doing the right thing, retiring his number. They retired Keith's number. They're retiring Straw's number. They're having a good year off the field. On the field, not so much, but
Not
off the
so
field, they're
much.
doing all right. Yeah.
Yeah, Straw and Gooden looked like they were on the Hall of Fame track when in the mid 80s, late 80s. Didn't go that way, obviously, because of off the field problems in particular. A player who does look like he is on a Hall of Fame track, Shohei Ohtani, got bad news this week. John and I will talk about that. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. John, you and I both spent a lot of time at Citi Field this week, and I think you were there for at least parts of all three games, all three pre-games. I was there for two, so we were around the Angels, and it's obviously not a great time for the Angels. They went all in at the deadline, decided not to trade Shohei Ohtani. They used some prospect collateral to try to get better, and like the Yankees, they fell completely out of it as soon as the deadline was over. They're in a helpless situation. And then to make matters worse, they found out, and Shohei Ohtani found out he has a tear in his UCL. Is he facing Tommy John surgery for the second time? What does that mean for a whole bunch of things, notably what we anticipated as the most anticipated free agency in the history of free agency? So, John, just ballpark, you were there a lot. What comes to mind first about Shohei Ohtani and what we've been counting down to this gigantic free agency?
Yeah, first of all, I still think it's the most anticipated free agent in history. He's still Shohei Ohtani. He's still, at least this year, the best offensive player in baseball. And, he's still Shohei Ohtani, a guy who can do both pitching and hitting spectacularly well. He won't be pitching for a while, we presume. Might be until 2025, might be later than that. We shall see, but he's still going to do extremely well based on how Aaron Judge could have done, not just the $360 million he got with the Yankees, the fact that he probably could have gotten over $400 million with the Padres and the Giants. I think Ohtani, being a guy who will be a pitcher again at some point, we presume, should be able to get around $500 million or thereabouts. Obviously, it's going to cost him some money. There's going to be some teams that were interested in pitcher two right away who might not be as enthused, may even pull out, not go for him. It'll be interesting to see which ones, but I still think he's going to break the record and by quite a bit.
Yeah, the record's about 423.5, is it? Trout for total.
426.5 if you count the previous years that Trout had, yes.
So I think you're right. I think he beats that, even if some team just saw him as an offensive player, and with all he brings potentially financially off the field. I think he'll probably break Scherzer and Verlander's 43.6 annual. So, you start playing it. Even if you want to play the 45 at 10, like that feels like the lowest number possible, right? Is 10 years at 450. If you're going to get there, I think he's going to break the 500 million. John, you wrote a couple of columns this weekend. One of them was to still give, you're really good at this. You used to help me over the years understand odds real well. You gave the odds of where you think it was. And of course, a lot of this is just, as we know, because we were there a lot this weekend, it isn't like Ohtani talks and you get a lot of information from him. But just for the fans quickly, because you wrote it and it was really, everyone should go to nypost.com, read John's work all the time. And this in particular, this was well done where you kind of set up the field and you had it in order: Dodgers, Padres, Angels, Red Sox, Rangers, Mets, Cubs, Mariners, Giants, Yankees field. Do you still believe that it's the Dodgers have lost so much pitching? We found out Tony Gonsolin needs Tommy John. Dustin May won't be back for half a season. Kershaw and Urias are free agency. I wonder, can they spend the big money this offseason on a guy they're not positive can help them in that area next season when they already know, well, we at least start with Betts and Freeman as we try to build a positional group?
Yeah, now those were last week's odds that I gave, and the Dodgers were the favorite last week. We were there this week. You hear all sorts of different things. One thing I heard is maybe he doesn't love hitting at Dodger Stadium. I have to check out his stats there, but I mean, the guy can hit anywhere, obviously. I would think the Giants would be at a handicap with their ballpark. Very tough for a left-hander who's not on the juice or anything like that to hit home runs there at the Giants ballpark. At Dodgers Stadium, I think they can overcome that ballpark, which I think plays fairly. And obviously, it's all conjecture because he's not confiding in me or anybody else at this point. Maybe his agents, that's about it. But we're reading tea leaves. He did have a lot of West Coast teams on the finalists last time, although who knows what the finalist list meant, because, there were 3 National League teams on the finalist list. And really looking back on it, there's no way he was going to go to a National League team, right? He had to go to an American League team so he could DH. Now, certainly the National League is out there. I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities. You hear he doesn't love pitching in Yankee Stadium. Maybe that doesn't affect it right now, as he's not going to pitch right away, but he is going to pitch at some point. So, you hear Texas, but then Texas is probably going to look more toward pitching than hitting, as well as the Dodgers. You make a good point with the Dodgers, the loss of Gonsolin. Maybe that does change the equation. We'll see how they do with Urias. I think they'd like to bring him back. I presume that he would like to stay. Again, with Ohtani, we really don't know. It's good that I'm good with numbers, but, as for who's the actual favorite, I think almost anybody could guess who it is, and who knows who's going to be right here.
John, after being around it for the weekend at Citi Field, I more and more thought I actually think the Angels have a shot to keep him.
Yeah, I do too.
For a variety of reasons, including being around them, you realize that an organization has to, A, cater to him, and B, cocoon him. This is what he wants. The fact that he has not talked about this injury, look, I every time you do this, people are like, screw you. I mean, ultimately, we're the conduit to the fans. I'm assuming the fans would like to know, for example, why not find out exactly what you have? If you need surgery, I had the excellent, the 2 of the guys I know you like at the network, also the research, Nate and Eric helped me look something up. Bryce Harper came back to hit in 160 days. It's 212 days to next opening day right now. Like, right. If he needs to have Tommy John surgery, and I'm a team about to spend $500 million, yeah. Look, it's a 10, 12-year contract, a month, whatever, but I'd still like to have him, since I don't have him to pitch next year. If he needs the Tommy John surgery, then go get it. If not, can you talk and explain why not? The Angels have learned to do this, and I wrote a column about this, John. There is complications to signing the guy. He is a great player, and I want to make clear, I wrote in the column, I hope he signs with one of the New York teams. I'd like to watch it every day. It's such a spectacle. But even at full health, which means pitching and hitting, you do have to have 5 other starting pitchers. Even at full health, yeah. He's going to be a DH, which means you have to have 8 position players, and none of them could kind of be the older guy who you want. You mentioned the Yankees. Like, unless they're going to waive Stanton, it's a hard guy to bring in to be just a DH. If he is in your rotation, it means you're going to play, you have 6 starters, you're going to play a reliever short at all times. I'm not sure. It took him 2 years to get back from his last Tommy John surgery as a pitcher. It isn't like he's rehabbing next year. Normally, he's going to hit all season. So this guy might not pitch to 26. If he has a second Tommy John surgery, are we so sure where people say, well, if he can't pitch anymore, he'll just go to the outfield? Outfielders have to throw the ball also. Can he just do that? I hope he comes and plays in New York, John. He is a great player. But this is a player who comes with a lot of complications, and being around it all weekend, I wonder, does the team that know him best have some advantages because there are complications?
Well, I'll say this. The Angels were my 3rd choice. I think they were still 12-1 because I had many teams on the list, and we really don't know where he's going. I do think that he probably appreciates the fact that he's let him do what he's wanted to do. I think that was probably the right decision. They're continuing to let him do what he wants to do. And I look at it a little more positively maybe than you, the fact that he is playing now rather than worrying about his free agency. Yeah, I mean, certainly if he was worried about the dollars, he'd get off the field right now, tend to his elbow, get it straightened out, figuring out exactly how long it's going to take. And obviously, he's already had a great year. People know what he's going to do. He's not really helping his free agency cause by continuing to play, but he is an employee of the Angels, and he is playing still, and he's playing extremely well. He's hitting better than anybody, as we saw at Citi Field this weekend. And so, I mean, I look at it more positively, like, certainly it's up to him. They're leaving it up to him, which they need to do because, that's part of their selling point is that they've let him do what he wants to do. And I can't blame them for that. But I look at it positively from his standpoint. He's an employee. He's helping the Angels. It doesn't mean he's going back to the Angels, but he is helping his current employee more than himself and his free agency. If he was about money, he would have waited a year or two, come over as a free agent and made at least close to his value. He made a fraction of his value. I mean, remember the first couple of years where he's making less than $1 million, and he's probably worth, 40, 50, $60 million and up. And he's certainly going to break the Scherzer Verlander record of $43.33 million. I don't think there's any question about that, but he's not about money. He's still playing. Yes, I agree with you. He's probably hurting his free agency. You can say he's hurting his next
I don't think it's hurting his free agency, John. I mean,
sure
whoever's going to pay him,
he's
ever going to pay him is going to pay him. He's hurting the team that signs him potentially at the beginning of next year by not being available from the beginning of the season.
Right, and that would hurt his value. So that potentially would hurt the dollars that he gets. If he goes and gets the operation now, presuming that he needs an operation, he'll be available a little bit sooner and certainly can make a case. I'll be a pitcher, and I'm anxious to help out my next team. Right now, he's helping out his team that he's already getting the $30 million, and that dollar amount is set. So I do think he is hurting it potentially to some degree, but he's not about money. You could say he's about putting up numbers, whatever. He's about playing, performing, doing his best, and I look at that positively.
Yeah, I think he wants to be the greatest. I wonder as time goes by, because I agree with you. I think he's going to continue to try to do both things. It's what his mindset is. And I've always been a champion of him doing both things. Seeing it in practice now, I'm not sure if that's best for whoever buys him moving forward, whoever gives him the contract. John, one of the other columns you wrote over the weekend about him was kind of a letter from John saying, hey, consider the New York teams. And you mentioned the 7 teams that he was open to on the front end. And the one commonality about all 7 of those teams is they trained in Arizona. Most of them were West Coast. All 7 teams train in Arizona, even like the Cubs, the Rangers, who weren't West Coast team, etc. I just wonder, because it's not that there's an easy flight from Japan, but it's an easier flight from Japan to get to the West Coast. If that is still going to be a factor here, I'm going to dismiss the Yankees because, look, maybe because it's Ohtani, you say, well, we'll just figure out Stanton gets hurt every year anyway. But it's hard to make him the full-time DH when you're still paying 25-ish a year to Stanton. The Mets are the wild card to me because of the Steve Cohen bankroll possibility. Do you see this as anything more than a Hail Mary, or do you believe that he'll end up on the West Coast or training in Arizona, Cubs, Rangers, etc.?
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock into that. I list the 7 finalists just because we don't have much information. I don't put too much stock into it because, like I said, he had 3 NL teams on there. He wasn't going to the NL at the time, which had no DH. So, obviously we know that he picked the Angels. That's one piece of information that we do have. It's kind of interesting you mentioned Stanton. I think he was kind of like the consolation prize that they signed, right?
That consolation prize, by the way.
When they weren't going to get Ohtani, they put in a full effort to get Ohtani. He told them basically, I love your organization. I've heard a lot of great things about it, but I don't see myself in a big city. And, then they moved on and they ended up signing Stanton. So, I'm with you. I think the Yankees were near the bottom of my list just because they can afford him. And, I think they'll give it a shot. But I'm with you. I don't see the Yankees as a likelihood. Obviously, Steve Cohen is more than a wild card. He certainly can afford it. He's certainly intrigued. He's certainly been around him, went to Japan, and there are tea leaves there. They also have Senga and are pursuing Yamamoto. I mean, there were 10 scouts at least that I know of looking at Yamamoto's last start, which was 7 scoreless innings, and they were among them. There were 9 others, so no guarantee there. But I would say Yamamoto might be more likely for the Mets.
Billy Epler flew to see this summer, went to Japan and did it. I think others, maybe Andrew Friedman from the Dodgers, who we had as a guest last week,
right,
and some others. Look, I'm going to see if you test your memory. It was a Bobby Valentineism that I really, really love. So, Cone is on the field at the WBC in Tokyo and Ohtani is there. And he told us he had promised his daughter on the show. He promised his daughters a trip there, and it was kind of off-site for his business. And Bobby Valentine, when there were two things that kind of were connected, and you wonder how they came together, he'd go, "Oh, that was quite a coincidence." Now, only if I believed in coincidences, that would be good.
I remember him saying.
And I always remember that, and I kind of I don't believe that was a coincidence. I think Cone was there for a specific reason. I wonder if it means so much to his day business. This is not a guy who separates ownership money, baseball money from his other money. He just uses his money to get what he wants. And if he can make a lot more money with his hedge fund because he's associated in some way with Ohtani, it opens up all kinds of possibilities and viabilities in Japan. I mean, to him, and you point this out all the time, remember, the tax goes to 110% for him next year. So Ohtani is double plus if you were to sign him, pretty much sign anybody this offseason. But he is the wildest of wild cards on all issues now moving forward, especially since I don't believe in coincidences with Ohtani.
Oh, I mean, there's no doubt that he's intrigued. I don't believe in this coincidence either. I do think he's very interested in Ohtani. Is the timing perfect? I mean, Ohtani's visit here to Citi Field, did that make a difference? Max Scherzer decided ultimately he's going to accept the trade to Texas because he was convinced that they're not going to be a World Series contender next year, and put it that way, but that's basically it. I do think Ohtani not only wants to put up numbers, I think he does want to win. I don't think he's about the money though. So I like I said, he came over and he made, over the last 6 years, he made a total of less than $60 million. He's worth $60 million per year. So, he's not a guy, he doesn't seem to be a big spender. The people now around him say that he basically just plays baseball, maybe plays some video games. I don't know. He's at home. He gets driven to the park by Ippei, works hard at the game and does his best at baseball, which, that's great for whoever signs him. But I'm not sure that the money is going to be the overriding factor here, which is why the Mets didn't make my top 5 probably.
Yeah. I do think from everything you hear about the player eats, sleeps, dreams about baseball and being as great as he could. And that's made him the great phenom in the game. If you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, we have a guy who was a phenom in his day, Dwight Gooden. Stick with us. Back on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, and we're very happy to be joined by Dwight Gooden, a player John and I covered in New York, and we're going to cover again next season. Has a great honor bestowed upon him. He is a legend of the sport in New York, and Steve Cohen and the Mets announced them last week that number 18 for Darryl Strawberry and number 16 for Doc Gooden are going to be retired. So, Doc, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the honor. And just as a starting point, what does it mean to you that you will be now kind of a forever Met?
Oh, man, it's a great deal for myself. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate you guys for having me on your show. It was when Steve called me a couple of weeks ago, it was the first time I was actually lost for words when he told me that the honor they was going to bestow on me for next year, that they're going to retire the number. And for the first probably 5 seconds, I just broke down. I couldn't believe it because, you hear that it might happen, but then you just don't know. And then when it's thrown upon you, it's just a dream come true. It's kind of, surreal. And I remember in 95 when the Mets wanted to cut ties with me because of suspension. And I was hurt because I wanted to make it right with the fans. I didn't want to go out my Met career the way it ended. And I remember I signed with the Yankees, which is great because I wanted to stay in New York. So Mr. Steinbrenner gave me an opportunity to do that. And after the 97 season, I called the Mets, and Steve Phillips was the general manager at the time, and not to throw stones at anybody, but I asked him, was there any chance of me coming back with any interest? He said, unfortunately, the roster is full. Wish you all the best. I signed with Cleveland for 98, 99. After the 99 season, I called the Mets again, said, hey, look, I'd like to come back, any openings or anything there. Once again, I was told, we don't have anything, nothing's there. I signed with Houston in the spring training as a non-roster player. I pitched one game, got traded to Tampa, pitched 8 games, got released. Call the Mets again. Say, look, I love to come back. I'll go to AAA. I'll do whatever you guys want. I just want to finish my career as a Met. I was told no again. I signed back with the Yankees. We beat the Mets in the World Series. After the season over, I was in spring training with the Yankees. I hurt my knee. I tore my MCL, actually, and I probably wasn't going to make the Yankees anyway. I called the Mets again. I'm not going to say any names who I talked to, but I said, look, can I sign a one-day contract to retire as a Met? I was actually turned down again. So for this to all come full circle, everything is timing. And Mr. Cohen and his wife, Alex, to give me an opportunity now to be forever a Met and have my number on the roster is just a tremendous honor. And I can't believe it. And when I got the message, obviously the first call I wanted to make was to my father, who was no longer here. So I was able to call my kids and share them on with my kids. So I'm just delighted and happy for Darryl, too, to have his number retired the same year.
Well, that's terrific. Hats off to Steve and Alex Cohen for doing the right thing and retiring your number. Certainly well deserved. Obviously, you've been through a lot during your career, after your career. Tell us, first of all, you look great. Tell us how you're doing, where you're living. I know we talked a little beforehand that you're in New York. You're a real New Yorker, but
yes.
Tell us how you're doing and where you're living and what you're up to.
Things are great. I always tell people I was born in Florida, but I was raised in New York. I came here as a 19-year-old. I'm in Long Island. This is where I live. This is home. Some great people here. I'm doing wonderful. I had a little scare a week ago. I was in the hospital for 4 days. I wasn't taking my blood pressure medicine, which is a no-no. That's something I have to do. And so it raised my pressure pretty good and had an irregular heartbeat. So I was at St. Francis Hospital for a couple of days. Thank God they have that under control now, and I have to continue to take my medicine because I lost both parents to heart disease, so I can't go that route, obviously. And things are great now with my sobriety. I have 4 years by the grace of God, so it's just one day at a time. Things are going great. This weekend, I'm going to Maryland to see my son's first college football game. He plays for the University of Maryland. They're playing Townsend, so I'm a little excited about that and just follow my grandkids around. And life's great. Kids are great. Our relationship's great. And it's good to see you guys. Good to be on the show.
Well, Doc, if the day job doesn't work out, you could be our producer. I was going to get to Dylan at some point. Since you jumped at that, you mentioned that Maryland opens against Towson. Your son was, I believe, one of the top recruited edge rushers in all of high school. Tell us a little about him. Is he going to start and or play Saturday? And what kind of player is he? And you know what professional athletes look like. Is he a professional athlete?
I think he has a shot. It's 1% that makes it. So I told him, you have a chance. I say the worst thing can happen is you get a free education, but you're so close. He's playing hard. He's like what they call like a freak athlete. That comes along once in a while. He's 6'5", 230. So they're trying to put some more weight on him. Outside linebacker and the edge rusher. He's going to be in different packages. I don't think he's actually going to start, but he's going to be in different packages, which is great. He's just an opportunity. And I'm very happy for him, very excited. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play. It's funny that you said, because now that he has his own apartment and he gets a check every month from the school, I very hear from him. I'll hear from him soon because his car insurance is due. So I'm sure he'll return checks now. But other than that, I wish him well, and he's doing great. So I'm looking forward to going down there with my other kids and watch him play.
Speaking of freak athletes, I mean, talk about 1% make it. You were in the 0.1% of the 0.1%. That first year, I was like a meteor. The first couple years, incredible. I mean, were you expecting to do that? What you did as a teenager to come in there and be the best pitcher in the major leagues? And how'd you do it? I mean, was it all natural, or were you just the hardest working guy in show business?
A little bit of both. I never expected that. My whole dream was to play Major League Baseball, obviously. Me and Gary, my nephew, Sheffield, we grew up in the same house. He's my sister's son. And my nephew, I'm 4 years older, but my dad taught both of us the game at a very young age. And my whole dream was to play Major League Baseball, but I never thought about, winning Cy Young, never thought about all these accolades that's come along with that. It's happened. And when I was 12 years old, I totally dominated. But the next year at 13, when I got to the bigger field, everything kind of equaled out. And then once I got to high school, I only played 2 years. My sophomore, well, we didn't have freshmen. My sophomore year, I made the team, but I wasn't going to start, so I decided I wouldn't play. I quit the team. It was something that my dad was very upset with me. I went back my junior year. I was an outfielder and a relief pitcher. We had Floyd Yeomans. We had this guy, Vance Lovelace, who's a big scout for the Dodgers now, and this guy, Albert Everett, who's Carl Everett's older brother. And we only played Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. So those were started out the relief pitcher. Unfortunately for Yeomans, but great for me, Yeomans was missing practice a lot. He got kicked off the team our junior year. That opened a spot for me to get into the rotation. And I ended up going 7-0 with like a 0-point-something ERA. And that's when I knew I had a shot at making it. But I never thought I'd get drafted that high. My senior year, my high school coach told me I'll probably go between the 10th and the 20th round. I signed a letter of intent to go to the University of Miami. But I was drafted by the Mets in the first round. And I don't know if you guys remember Tom McCruin with the Tampa Tribune.
Yeah.
He invited me, Richard Montione, and Lance McCullers Sr. to come down and watch the draft. And the Mets drafted me. Back then, it wasn't, we didn't have the MLB networks and all the. So to go across this stream, you see New York. Well, they took Sean Dunston. The Cubs took Sean Dunston. I forgot who went 2, 3, 4. And number 5, it said New York Mets selects Tampa's Dwight Gooden. I actually had Tom call New York to make sure that was correct because of what my high school coach told me, and it was for real, and just went from there. And my minor league career started off okay, in Kingsport, and then Lynchburg, and then went to AAA with Davey Johnson the end of '83. And Davey told me wherever he managed the following year, I would be on the team. So big props to Davey for helping me make the team my first year.
Doc, I was thinking today when I knew we were going to interview you, can you imagine if there was an internet for the 1980s Mets, and especially like not just the off the field, which would have been crazy, but your 85 season, because I was 21, I was UPI. It was an event every 5 days when you started. Just for our fans who might not know, 24-4, 153 ERA, 268 strikeouts. By the way, 16 complete games that season. I wonder if you and I mean you had to no VCRs, etc., no DVD, no DVR. Like you made sure you were in front of a television to watch Doc Gooden starts. Can you, in some way, encapsulate that season for us? You end up, of course, being the Cy Young. And if it was a different day, the Mets would have been at least a wild card. You don't make it to the playoffs that year.
Oh, man, that year was incredible because I think having the experience I had after 84, I would say probably after about my 5th or 6th start in 85, I knew it was bigger than just a start with the media attention, the sellout crowds, and all the interview demands after the game with Jay Horace, who did a great job. I accepted the challenge. I knew it was bigger and I wanted to be on the mound. And I had to give a lot of credit to Gary Carter, who played a big part of my success that year because Gary demanded nothing but the best out of me every start. He communicated between starts. If he wasn't batting or I wasn't batting, we sit and talk how we're going to approach the next hitters. And he wanted the best. He wanted the complete game. He wanted the shutout. He wanted the 10-plus strikeouts. And a big part of him. But every start was bigger. And I accepted the challenge. And when I took the mound, I wanted that because I knew the fans wanted that. And it was a situation where I didn't put any added pressure on myself, but I accepted, not that I disrespected opposing teams, but if we scored a couple of runs early, I just want to be out on the mound every chance I get because the fans brought so much energy and excitement out of me at Shea Stadium. It was just, that's the best way I can explain it. It was just like being in totally command every start and having Gary Carter as my catcher, demanding the best out of me and wanting that and catching me in between starts, which I never had a catcher do that, played a huge part of that for me.
You're reminding me what a great guy you are, and always giving credit to everybody. You've given credit to Jay Horwitz, to Davey Johnson, to Gary Carter. Who gets the credit for your curveball? Because that's really, I mean, you threw hard, and now there are a lot of people who throw upper 90s, but you threw harder than almost everybody. But that curveball, incredible. Where did that come from? Was that your dad? Was that Gary? Where was it?
100% was my dad. My dad always felt like it was how you throw opposed to what you throw. What he meant was if your mechanics is sound, your mechanics is on time, it doesn't matter what pitch you throw at what age. He taught me the curveball at a very young age, probably 10 years old. We used to do a lot of drills at the ballpark without a glove, without a ball, and Gary would have no bat, and we'd just do these drills, which it wasn't fun. I remember coming home sometime telling my mom, Dad is taking me to the park. He's making me do all this crazy stuff. You don't know what he's doing, but he was teaching me about mechanics. So as I got older, and he put the ball in my hand, I knew like if my leg wasn't landing in the right spot, and my arm wasn't in the right spot, that I was off, and I knew how to correct that at a very young age, and it all makes sense. But my dad deserves the credit for that, for teaching me the curveball at 10 years old, because I only had two pitches, fastball and curveball, but I turned the curveball into two pitches where I would change speeds with it, and I can locate it as well.
You know, Doc, again, I was looking at the numbers this morning, and something hit me hard. By the age of through your age 21 season, you had 745 innings. Just to give an idea, that's 50 more than Max Fried has in his whole career at this point, and he's 29, right? By 28, you have had 2,129 innings. That's more than everyone but 7 guys who are playing right now, and that includes guys like Madison Bumgarner, who was released, not playing anymore, Johnny Cueto, who's hardly played. So I wonder, you obviously peaked very young. You know, like your best season's 85, probably by the late 80s, you're not the same pitcher anymore.
Right.
Have you ever come to peace with, was it, I was used too much too soon and I should have been protected better? Or was this about off the field issues that sapped something from your career?
That's a great question, because I beat myself up so much about the off the field problems that I had and addiction that I had that caused my career to turn out the way it did at the end. And the more I look at it, the more I hear the numbers that you bring up, I'd have to say it was probably a mixture of both. If I had to do it over, I wanted to do it the way I did it for the innings, because that was just a different time in the game. And I wanted to be out there and complete the games. Like all my stats in 85, I'm more happy and satisfied with the 16 complete games than actually the wins. But looking at it now, probably a lot of wear and tear, because even in high school, we played Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. In my senior year, I would start Tuesday, I might relieve Friday, depending on the score, and then start Saturday. And then the same thing through the minor leagues, I pitched a lot. But looking back at it now, I'll probably say it was a mixture of both, because the addiction does wear on you as well, because the work ethic changed a little bit during the off season. But the minor innings and the build up at a young age, it was definitely a lot of work and a lot of overwork as well.
You know, Joel's talked about 1984, 1985. Let's talk about 1986. I think that's the year that Mets fans want to hear about. Now, you obviously had some downs in 86 as well, but what do you recall about that year? I mean, you were obviously a great pitcher, didn't have quite the year you had in 85, but obviously there were some missteps as well. What are your greatest recollections, good and bad, about that 86 season?
I think the good thing about 86, I thought I was doing well. I still had to complete games, and I kept the team in every game I pitched, pretty much for the most part. The numbers weren't there, so I was happy looking back at it now, the 86 that I had. But overall, I think that's when I lost a little bit of the fun during the season, because everything was compared to the 85 because of the standards, and I set the bar so high in 85, everything was going to be compared to that. And I remember, I forget what game it was, but I think it was against Fernando early in the season. I got the win, complete game, but only had like 5 strikeouts. And the first question was, what happened? You only had 5 strikeouts. And politically, I said the right question. I said, well, I'm not worried about the strikeout. I want to win the game. But I went home and I couldn't sleep. I was just thinking about the next start. I got to get 10 strikeouts. I got to get 11 strikeouts. I got to see the Ks. And so I'll allow myself to not enjoy it as much for probably half of that 86 season, because I wasn't able to match the numbers that I had in 85, especially for the strikeouts. And looking back at it now, even that I've been retired for 20-some years, and even toward the end of my career, I don't know how that happened, but it's just that the expectation I actually had on myself was so high because of the 80-45 season that I wasn't able to match those numbers. So I wasn't allowed to have as much. I didn't allow myself to have as much fun in 86. But even when we won the World Series, I didn't pitch well in the World Series. And believe it or not, I've never said this before publicly, but when Orozco struck out Barrett, I was actually kind of hoping he would have walked him. So I was actually warming up in the bullpen, and Davey, I don't know if he's going to bring me in to face Rice or whatever, but I was kind of hoping Barrett would have got on, because I wanted to redeem myself, which is very selfish, to come in to at least face Rice and end on a good note. I mean, it's very selfish to think that way, but that's just the way my mindset was at that time. But so 86 was like up and down, even though we won the World Series. I was very happy to get my first ring with the guys who drafted me and a lot of guys I played in the minors with. But honestly, it wasn't the most fun I had, for as a complete season throughout my career.
Still helping the writers by giving us exclusive stories. We appreciate it, Doc.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes.
Doc, I think one of the things we think about with that era of Mets is, did they leave championships on the table? The team was so talented and so close. And it does feel, I know our colleague Mike Vaccaro wrote a long story recently about the pivot. You giving up the home run to Scioscia, the 2-run homer in Game 4. It's of the '88 NLCS. It's 4-2. You're a couple of outs away from going up 3-1. I think we believe if you do that, you go on and you win the pennant that year. You play in the World Series again. I wonder your recollections of that. You mentioned you had a sleepless night because you didn't strike out more than 5 guys. How many sleepless nights have there been since Mike Scioscia?
Oh man, it was sleepless nights up until probably about 8 or 9 years ago. I talked to Mike Scioscia in Yankee Stadium. I was doing a clinic, and the Angels getting ready to play, and he came out early, and we had the conversation about what happened in '88. And I just wanted to know from him, because I'm thinking I walked Shelby on 4 pitches in the 9th inning. Scioscia's up. He's not a home run hitter. My mindset is, let me get ahead with strike 1. I'm not thinking he's going to swing. And he's probably thinking, Doc's a fastball pitcher. He only got 2 pitches. He just walked Shelby. Scores 4-2. I'm going to crowd the dish. I'm going to look in. First pitch, I'm going to cheat him. If it's there, I'm going to jump him. And that's what he did. And we talked about it, and that's exactly what he did. So after he told me that, I was able to kind of let it go a little bit. But you're 100% right. That changed the whole series. And it was a lot of sleepless nights about it. And now that you brought it up, I probably won't sleep tonight either.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But you're right. That changed everything. And I always think about, when people talk about, did we leave anything on the table after the '86 season? It's a tough question, because a lot of times, as you guys know, it's not always the best team that wins. It's the hottest team in the postseason that wins. But to justify all that and make me feel better about myself, I look at the run that the Braves had in the '90s, and I say, man, they left a lot on the table. But I do think we left a couple on the table. And a lot of guys that I play with say, no, you never know what could have happened. You got to be happy with the one, which I'm very happy with the one. But I still feel that we did leave a couple on the table, especially in '88.
I mean, you obviously had some amazing years. That year in '85, memorable to all of us. The 1.53 ERA, a great career. That's why you're being retired. You should be commended. You're several years. Did you say 4 years sober? That's terrific. Looking back on it, it seemed like the issues or problems off the field started in that '86 year. I know I've read books by you on you. You had suggested Tampa was an issue for you. Obviously, the '80s were different than they are now. Well, looking back on it, what do you think happened? And because obviously people can see what a great guy you are. This happens to good people, bad people, all the same. But we know what a good fellow you are, and that's not it. It's just a mistake that happened. But is it the era, the geography? What do you think happened there in '80s? I think it started in '86, right?
Well, thank you for the kind words, and you're 100% right. With addiction, it doesn't discriminate. It don't matter if you're a good person, you're a black person, white, black, it doesn't matter. And I think with me, and not to justify anything, I take full responsibility of my downfalls and troubles. But in the family, it was addiction there with alcoholism, and that we didn't know about it at the time. And then with my problem, like you're right, it started in '86, a lot of pressure. And if I had to do it over, I wish I could have talked to somebody and been honest with myself, whether it's my parents or Dr. Lance, who was around as well, and tell them what was really going on. It started with my drinking started increasing more because I wasn't happy. Even though if I got a win, the bar was set so high. If I got the win, if I won 5-4, I had 3 strikeouts and I pitched 6 innings. To me, I was upset with that. I mean, to you guys, I'll say, yeah, I'm happy with that. We got the win. I'll celebrate things, but then I would go back to my hotel room and drink myself so I can fall asleep because I was so upset with my outing. That's where it started. It became a problem very quickly without me knowing it. And once I got home during the offseason, after the World Series, after missing a parade was a very tough thing to swallow because you can't redo that. And there was a lot of self-pity. And so I would go home and drink more. And it started with the marijuana. The next thing you know, I was introduced to the cocaine. And unfortunately, the first time I tried cocaine, I was addicted right away. And it became a big problem. I was in denial for a long time with that. And the problem just got worse and worse as I started doing more as well. So that's some things that happened that I can't redo, unfortunately. So today I just try to turn that mess that I made into messages for the youth and to help others. And by me talking about it helps me as well. So I don't get too comfortable with the situation I'm in now.
Doc, after that fall, you did have a rise again with the Yankees. You were a very important player on the '96 team. I think people don't remember the '96 team isn't like later Yankee teams that had the giant payroll. It was way ahead of everyone. Baltimore was favored to win. And your no-hitter that year is, I think, the touch point when folks finally figured out it was a special team. You almost got released after a couple of starts that year. You only end up back in the rotation because your best friend on the team, David Cohn, has an aneurysm.
Yes.
He's in one hospital. You mentioned your father, how important he is. Your father, I believe, is getting open heart surgery in Tampa the morning after you're going to pitch that game against Seattle, the team that knocked the Yankees out because their offense was so great the year before, and you're on the mound in mid-May against them. I wonder if you could transport back to that night. It is a great story, and what it means to you looking back that you were able to do that for the Yankees.
Yes. Oh man, you almost got me choked up just thinking about that. The way things happened, because you're right. The first three starts wasn't that good, and I was actually benched. And when a pitcher gets benched, I mean, you're not getting if you're up 10 or down 10. And my good friend and pitching coach Mel Stoudemire, he didn't give up on me. He would have me come to the park early. We'll work on mechanics. We'll work on different things, and he believed in me. And you're right. When David Cohn unfortunately got the aneurysm, well, before he got the aneurysm, it was talk about me to get him released or possibly getting sent down to AAA to work on some things. David got the aneurysm, and even when he got the aneurysm, I remember Joe Torre, he wanted Ramiro Mendoza into the rotation. And George Steinbrenner was the only guy said, and Stoudemire said, no, let's give Gooden another shot. Let's put Gooden back into the rotation. And luckily, I had been working on things with Mel. I hadn't lost confidence in myself. I was just waiting for opportunity to do it. And putting back into the rotation, I think it might have been my fourth or fifth start into the rotation, was a no-hitter. And the day of the no-hitter, wow, that's tough. The day of the no-hitter, I was supposed to have flew home to be with my dad, who was getting ready to have open heart surgery the next day. I had my plane ticket to go home. That morning I woke up, all I could think about was the days my dad spent with me at the Little League Park with me and Gary, working on different things and talking to me about work comes first. Take care of your job responsibilities first. Take care of your family. Everything else, take care of yourself. For some reason, that kept ringing in my ear. So I called Joe Torre, told him I'm not flying home, coming in to pitch. He said, no, go home, take as much time you need. We'll see you when you get back. I said, no, I'll be in tonight. I'm pitching tonight. The next call was a little tougher. I had to call my mom and tell my mom I wasn't coming home. And she said, no, you have to come home. Your dad's expecting you. You need your support. All your family's going to be here. There's no question about it. I'm going to pick you up from the airport. I actually end up hanging the phone up on my mom because I was just feeling that bad. That whole day, I'm deciding, did I make the right decision? Should I go home? Should I pitch? Am I going to see my dad again? I'm not going to see my dad again. I get to the ballpark. I talked to Mel Stoudemire. He wanted to make sure I was okay mentally. I said, Mel, I'm okay. I'm good to go. The first 3 minutes of that game, I was standing in the walkway between the clubhouse and the dugout. Sometimes tearing up, thinking about my dad, sometimes not. In the first 3 innings, I would, whatever Joe Girardi sign he put down, I would just go with the pitch. I was totally out of the game. Not till like the 6th inning, I looked up at the scoreboard while I was batting to see who Seattle had coming up. And you see no runs, no hits, no errors. And the anxiety kicks in, the heart started beating a little faster. I was able to put my dad's situation aside and pitch the rest of that game. And I remember the 9th inning, but the score is 2-0. I walked 2 guys in the 9th. Mel Stoudemire came out to the mound and he goes, Doc, how you doing? I said, it doesn't matter, Mel. I'm not coming out. He says, your game to have. Go get him. The last out was Paul Sorrento. And you talk about a game of inches. The pitch to Mike Socha that he hit out at 88 was a better pitch than the one I threw Mike Socha. Paul Sorrento that he popped up to put a no-hitter. But just everything is timing in the game of inches. So when I threw it, it was a hanging curveball sitting on the tee. He popped it up. Sent the ball was in the air forever. When Jeter made the catch, everything you can imagine is going through my mind. The year before, been suspended. Early in the year, about to be released or sent down. My dad's in the hospital. Is he going to make it? I'm back at Yankee Stadium where all the great players has played. And my teammates that came off the field, I'm pumping my fists. And all these things are going through my mind. Obviously, I didn't sleep that night. I took a ball home from the game to get to my father. I saw him. At the time, he was on life support. He never made it home from the hospital, but turned out the last game he saw me pitch was at no-hitter. And that made it that much special that year.
Now you give me goosebumps.
That's something. That's
yeah.
Sorry.
It's a hell of a story. This will be the last one for me. You've really been a treat, Doc. Really fantastic job. Mel Stoudemire, obviously the Mets connection there. That was big for you to get that start. I want to ask you about the guy you're going to forever be linked with in Mets history, and that's Darryl Strawberry. The announcement came together. They put you two together in the announcement anyway. How was your relationship with Darryl and other members of that 86? Because, that team's going to be remembered forever, mostly for winning the championship, but also for being, a very interesting and fun team to follow.
Oh, yes. My relationship with Darryl is great. It's been hot and cold the last couple of years, but I would say we're great now. We're probably closer than we've ever been, even as players. We talked like 2 days ago. When he's in town, we get together, we have lunch or dinner. We might meet today. He's in town now doing some work. But I think a lot of times when we had our faults was because we allowed outside people who we thought was friends to interact, and it was like a lot of hearsay where we get to the point where I'm firing words at him, he stands up to me instead of us calling each other, sitting down like men and working it out. We learned a lot from that, and he's my brother. Today I love him. Tomorrow I don't know what might happen tomorrow, but but I'm just kidding. I love Daryl. I remember my mom was sick before she passed. He actually went to Tampa to see her, spent the whole day with her and prayed over her. Those are things that stick mostly to my heart that I remember, and I'm very, very excited for him too because we've had a lot of the same issues. He's doing great now with his ministry. I'm very proud of him. And then my rest of my teammates from '86, I see a lot of them at the Mets fantasy camp. I see Mookie a lot with the stuff he's doing. We do a lot of stuff together. And when I'm at the park, I try to make sure I stop by and see Ronnie and Keith. So very close-knit team still today. And I'm very happy for those guys and the ones that are doing well.
Doc, as a way to wrap this up, I think you and Straw will hear ovations next year that will remind you both how beloved you are in the city and what you mean to a group of fans and their memories of what's still the last championship, and just again how special your starts were. And I think that's a reminder that people care about you. You've mentioned sobriety for 4 years now. You mentioned you're doing well. I wonder, as a way to wrap up, how you mentioned you'd like to help people. What has been the key to you kind of being able to get through 4 years now and be in a better place?
I think for me, and that's a great question, it's being honest with myself, not worrying about what people are going to say, not worrying about how I'm going to be judged or how I'm going to be looked at, but just speaking the truth, my true feelings, surrounding myself with good people. Unfortunately, I had to let some family people go because of what their situation was. I just put myself in a better situation and forgive myself. That was the hardest thing for me to do, forgive myself on a daily basis, which sometimes I still struggle with that, and understanding that that person, that animal who's in addiction, that's not me today. But at the same time, I know as soon as if I let my guard down, I can go right back to that same guy within a heartbeat. I'm aware of that today, and I understand that, and I just want to be around. I want to live for myself today. I used to try to say I want to do it for my kids, I want to do it for my mother, my grandkids, but today I want to do it for myself. And I think if I do it for myself, that will take care of others and just helping others, just being there to help others and not afraid and feel bad or embarrassed about sharing my stories of what I've been through. And all the support that I get from the fans and everyone else really helps a lot too as well. And it means a lot. So when I see people now, it's about maybe hugs instead of handshakes. I had to learn it's okay to cry. It's okay to show your emotions. A lot of things that I grew up just the opposite. Men don't cry, men don't hug, men don't share your real feelings. I had to learn all that the opposite. And again, I don't blame anybody for my mistakes that I made. I just live day to day now, moment to moment at times, and just happy with my life now today.
Doc, I've learned over the years not to talk for John and not to talk for a fan base, but I'm going to do it here. I think we're all very happy to hear those words, see how good you look right now. And we're all hoping that one day at a time, one step at a time, it continues because it was really great to cover you. And it's great to see you now. And John and I appreciate you joining us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me. And I appreciate you guys. And thank you guys for not only being great guys, covering me in the media, but good friends that I consider as well. So thank you guys so much. And I can't wait to next year. It's going to be a big celebration for everybody who's always supported me from day one.
Thanks to Dwight Gooden, of course. We appreciate Doc joining us. John, hit or error this week. What do you got?
Well, I guess it's an error on me, but it's a hit for the Mariners. I'm doing mea culpas all over the place these days. I did one over the Mets sale, which I said they should keep going, and they did not only a sale, they did an enormous sale, and they were correct. And I was wrong about the Mariners. They've turned out to be a pretty darn good team right now, 20-5 as we do this month, and right now in position to win a very difficult division. I know we always talk about the AL East being the most difficult, but right now we're going to have 3 teams from the West in the playoffs, along with Houston and Texas. And great job by the Mariners to get into this position. Not many teams that are sellers move into a playoff position basically a week after they did their sale. And I don't blame them for their sale. They traded a closer, and they had a closer in tow, so they were okay there. So good job by the Mariners, bad job by me.
Well, John, I'm a hate prediction guy, but I think, and I'm not even positive, this is how much I hate predictions. I think in our preview, I picked the Mariners and Braves to play in the World Series. So I think I'm still open for that possibility. And I do think the Mariners saw some value in Canzone and Rojas as lefty bats that they needed to kind of like deepen their depth, their positional depth. So it wasn't a complete giveaway. And for those who are interested, on our the Post Pace the subscription Post Plus, I ranked this week 1 through 30, the team set up rotation wise the best for 2024. And I have Seattle number 1. It's all prime age guys who they control for years, led by Luis Castillo. And don't forget, they get Robbie Ray, who had Tommy John surgery, back for next season as well. John, I'm going to go with a hit also, and I'm going to stay in the AL West. Jose Altuve had a cycle yesterday. And look, he's going to be clouded historically by trash cans and buzzers. But the best thing you could do to run away from trash cans and buzzers is just keep being the same hitter you've always been. And at this point, I assume there are no buzzers, there are no trash cans. This was a season of some significant injury for him, right? He fractured the thumb in the WBC. He had an oblique injury. I think he's only played 62 games this year. But Jose Altuve is hitting .322 with a .944 OPS. He's one of the great hitters of our generation. He's literally a hit. And so I'm going to give him my hit for the week.
Yeah, I'm with you on Altuve. I think he was unnecessarily, unfairly castigated over the trash can. I know he was in the clubhouse, so you can blame everybody. I mean, was one of the players going to be a whistleblower? I don't see that. He didn't take the signal. So he didn't want it. He didn't take it. He wasn't part of it. Yet he's the one who's the face of it, at least for the fans of Yankee Stadium. I don't think that's right. I think he is a Hall of Famer. On your predictions, good job with the Braves Mariners. I think I had the Angels Padres. So you either are better at this or put a little more thought into it. I will say predicting rotations going forward is a dicey proposition.
Yes,
if you recall, MLB.com, not to pick on them because I admitted my own terrible prediction, said the Mets had the best rotation this year. Didn't quite work out that way.
Yeah, predictions are tough. It's why I generally ignore them because nobody ever does, except for you, John, which I give you credit. Nobody ever does the mea culpa. I always just have to hear, I predicted this thing. I said, you were 0 for 9 before this one. This is the one you're bragging about. Anyway, I hate predictions.
But it's not good when you have as many mea culpas as predictions. So that's been that kind of year for my predictions.
I have faith in you, John. You're going to, the mea culpa.
Come back. I could be the comeback predictor of the year next year.
You're going to be our hit next week. John's predictions.
We'll see.
I hope everyone sticks with us next week. The show, a podcast from the New York Post, is always Andrew Hartz and Jake Brown, our producers, help us get through the show each week. Our show drops on the Yes app, usually about noon on Wednesday each week. Don't forget, subscribe, rate, review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. It does help the show if you give us a review, especially a positive review, 5 stars out there. We're like Uber drivers, and stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.